after 20 years of U.S. military involvement in Afghanistan. President Joe Biden announced yesterday that it's, quote, time for American troops to come home. As Politico notes, the military spent more than a decade urging 3 different American presidents to stay in Afghanistan. With President Joe Biden's decision this week to withdraw all U.S. forces by September 11th, they finally lost the battle. Biden made the announcement from the Treaty Room, the same location where President George W. Bush announced a month after 9/11 that strikes against al-Qaeda had begun.
We went to Afghanistan because of a horrific attack that happened 20 years ago. That cannot explain why we should remain there in 2021. Rather than return to war with the Taliban, we have to focus on the challenges that are in front of us. When I came to office, I inherited a diplomatic agreement duly negotiated between the government of the United States and the Taliban that all U.S. forces would be out of Afghanistan by May 1, 2021, just 3 months after my inauguration. That's what we inherited, that commitment. It's perhaps not what I would have negotiated myself, but it was an agreement made by the United States government, and that means something. So in keeping with that agreement and with our national interest, the United States will begin our final withdrawal, begin it on May 1 of this year. We'll not conduct a hasty rush to the exit. We'll do it responsibly, deliberately, and safely.
After making the announcement, the president visited Arlington National Cemetery, where more than 2,300 casualties of Operation Enduring Freedom are buried. Joe symbolically showing why he feels this must be done.
Right. Well, Jonathan Lemire, Joe Biden was a skeptic of our participation in Afghanistan before he was sworn in as vice president, famously having confrontation in Afghanistan with then President Karzai, pushing away from the table, throwing down his napkin, and leaving because of corruption in that government. He then was opposed to Barack Obama increasing the number of troops in Afghanistan. So a lot of people not surprised by this decision.
Yeah, Joe, this was a long time coming, as you just laid out. Now, President Biden has been a long time skeptic of Americans' presence there, long-running presence in Afghanistan. He was overruled repeatedly while vice president, but his position didn't change. He believed that, as he laid out yesterday, that America's mission in that country was to eliminate a safe haven for terrorists. That was, of course, the country where the September 11th attacks were launched from. And as he said yesterday, that had been accomplished. He also, and this is interesting, for a president who has been so quick to overturn and overrule so much of what he inherited from his predecessor, tossing out so much of President Trump's policy decisions, he said yesterday that that treaty that the Trump administration negotiated with the Afghanistans was legal. It was done correctly, and America should oblige by it, should honor it. He pushed back the timeline slightly, of course, and now there'll be the symbolic exit on the 20th anniversary of those terror attacks. But he felt like Americans needed to keep their word here. Now, of course, there has been some criticism from the usual suspects among Republicans, a few moderate Democrats in the Senate as well, and certainly some in the military establishment who feel that America's presence should still be there. And no question, there are real concerns as to what will fill that void. Will the Taliban roll back human rights gains, particularly for women in that country? But Biden laid out the sacrifice that American soldiers have really borne the brunt of for the last 20 years, NATO troops leaving as well. And he underscored that with the visit to the cemetery and speaking personally about his own son, Beau Biden, a veteran, and his service. So this, of course, will be a wait-and-see game. There'll be a lot of world leaders nervously watching what happens in Afghanistan. But this was something that was a long time coming for this president.
A long time coming for this president. Obviously, Donald Trump wanted to remove troops from the beginning of his administration and pushed back against generals in the Pentagon who pushed back against him. Willie, obviously there is great risk to this move as well. We saw what happened when Americans cheered, including myself, this country's exit from Iraq. But that created a void, and into that void, ISIS moved, and then we had to send troops back over to clean that up. And there is no question that the Taliban will act as the Taliban always acts, towards civilians, towards women, towards young girls, towards people who aren't Islamic extremists. They will act abhorrently. The New York Times reporting a few weeks ago that ISIS also gaining a foothold in Afghanistan as well. This certainly is something that the president and those in his cabinet understood, and a risk they were willing to take, but there is no guarantee that we won't be back or some force won't be back in the future for the same reason we had to go back into Iraq after we left.
And that's exactly the point a lot of military leaders, former military leaders like General David Petraeus made yesterday. He was very vocal with his criticism of Joe Biden. Of course, General Petraeus commanded forces in Afghanistan for a long time and said, the endless war doesn't end just because we leave. To your point, we may have to go back and clean up what we leave behind.
Hey, thanks so much for watching our YouTube channel. You can follow up on today's top stories and breaking news, or catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.